Welcome to Real Life Real Estate. I'm Suzanne Prezio, and each week I have a member from our community who comes on to discuss the services they provide or tell us a little bit about their business. Again, this podcast isn't about buying a home or selling a home, which obviously I can help you with. But one thing we all have in common is we all live somewhere and we live within the community. So what I'm trying to do is just introduce you to people who are in our community that you may not know that business is out there, but it may be something that draws your interest or you find you have a need for. And today we have my dear friend Michele Martin. Michele is a divorce mediator, and she's also a certified divorce financial analyst. Thank you, Michele, for being here.
Thank you for having me back.
I know that you are a busy woman, and I do appreciate you giving me all this time because I think that you have a lot of interesting information to provide. I'm going to give your phone number right out of the gate, and I will give this information again for anyone that doesn't have a pen, or if you're like in my house, you can find a napkin, maybe a pencil if you're lucky. So it's 518-813-6098. Or you can go to divorceagree.com. And Michele said either feel free to call her at 518-813-6098 or go online, divorceagree.com, and all the information that you need to set up an appointment should be there, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
exactly.
So we had a teaser the last time we did this. I left everybody hanging with this question. Is there anyone for whom mediation wouldn't be a good option?
Yes. So, yes, mediation would not be a good option for people where the dynamic, how do I say this? The dynamic is strength dynamic, I guess you could say, is just out of whack, where one person's personality is so much stronger than the other person's, or there's, I guess, maybe fear from the other person, and maybe not abuse, but the other person is just so afraid to talk around the other person. The other person has such a stronger personality than one party has such a stronger personality than the other party. One party is afraid to speak up and just can't do it, and it just is unable to advocate for themselves at all. So as a mediator, honestly, a mediator is not supposed to advocate for either party. I'm going to be honest. I'm not probably a normal mediator in that if somebody is not advocating for themselves, I'll get in there and I'll say, you got to advocate for yourself. And I'll just get in there and be like, whoa, stop. You got to talk. And I will just insist on it. And, I'm not a shrinking violet in there. And I'm probably a little more involved than a mediator is supposed to be. In mediator school, you learn that the mediator is just supposed to be sitting in there like this. And that's not me. It just isn't. Like, I point out things. I point out what's going on. I'll say, like, if someone suggests a settlement offer that's ridiculous, I'll say that's ridiculous and this is why. Especially if it has to do with finance and numbers, and I'll say this would never work and this is why. And if I feel strongly about it, I say it. Mediators aren't really supposed to do that, but I know it's not going to work for XYZ. I say it because I'm just not going to let people walk out the door with that agreement that makes no sense financially, or I know is just whatever reason. So I say that. And if I see this going on where someone isn't saying, if someone's like, yes, I'm like, no, you got to talk. But I can only do that so much. I can't sit there and advocate for one side only when the other side is like, blah, 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 blah. And then I'm sitting there for the other side going over here for them going, blah, blah, blah. Then I'm over here for the other side, almost like their lawyer or something, you know what I mean? And then I'm working for one side and I'm working for both sides. So I can't keep doing that. And if it gets to be too much, I finally, well, first of all, one side's going to be like, well, you're on her side or you're on his side. And believe me, it's not like, I think some people must think, oh, it's the man bullying the woman. And that's not true. Believe me, it goes both. Sometimes there are just as many. It's never like one or the other. Sometimes it's in a situation. It might be the man who's that way. It might be the woman who's that way. So if it's too much and I can't encourage the other person enough to speak for themselves and it's going too far, I finally do. And they're not coming up with agreements that are working or that I believe are at all equitable, or in the best interest of both parties. I have to say, you know what, I'm not comfortable with this agreement. You need to go hire a lawyer and leave mediation because this isn't good for you. You're not good at mediation. So that would be a situation. It doesn't happen very often. And usually, and sometimes they can stay in mediation and I can say, you need to hire a lawyer just to go consult with, and then it's okay. But sometimes it's just not working. They're just too afraid to speak up or for whatever reason. It might not be fear that they're going to go get killed when they walk out the door, but it's just been their dynamic their whole life, or they're just not that person who's able to speak up for themselves.
Okay, so somebody who's a little more timid, easily intimidated, you see them being steamrolled, it's just not going to work.
Right, and I can only do so much.
Right.
Other situation would be a very, very complex financial situation. And I don't mean someone with a lot of money, because I've done some very high net worth divorces in mediation and they've worked out great. Like I'm talking really high net worth. But if you have some serious trusts and businesses and that may not work, but I wouldn't write it off. So you should talk to me first, because that actually might be a really good situation for mediation. Whereas otherwise lawyers wouldn't be able to make heads or tails of it again, writing letters back and forth. So we should look at it and see, maybe it is actually a good situation for mediation. Now, the really big situation where mediation wouldn't work would be if you actually think your spouse has secret bank accounts somewhere, is hiding money somewhere, is really doing subversive financial things. Mediation is probably not for you. Because one of the things, the one big difference between mediation and going to attorneys is you are kind of saying, I believe that everything we're putting on the table is what we both have. We're not going to order financial, experts to go look into each other's bank accounts and to do we're not going to spend $50,000 or more to hire these people to make sure that what we're putting on the table is real. You can ask and say, while we're in the meeting, wasn't there one other bank account that I thought you had? And the husband might say, oh no, remember we took that bank account and we liquidated it to buy X? And the wife might say, oh, that's right. Okay, yes, I forgot, you're right. Or no, and we might talk about it and then figure out where it went. But if you really think that your spouse has $3 million stashed somewhere and it's really bothering you and it's there somewhere, or this, that, and the other thing, then mediation probably isn't for you. You should probably get a lawyer who's going to order a, forensic accountant to go look into these things.
Okay.
So I hope that was probably a really long-winded answer.
No, that was great. And then I'll tell you one of the things that caught my attention when you and I first met was how you do stop and think and say, hey, does this make sense? Because, when I went to mediation, I could have agreed to dress like the Easter Bunny the first Monday of every month, and he going to just write it down and say, that sounds, okay, all right, you two are, and when you had said about how you step back and say, does this make sense? Let's talk about this. Knowing nothing about mediation, I only knew what I knew. And then I'm thinking, well, that's a huge difference from what I just experienced, so I'm glad that you're getting this out there, because again, a lot of people don't know what mediation is. They don't get that this can be a very economical solution, and it can be amicable too. How many people have you helped over the years?
Oh gosh, it's been hundreds and hundreds. Like, I'm thinking over 500 couples.
Wow.
Well, yes.
Wow, that's wonderful. And maybe I answered this, maybe you want to embellish. How can you tell a good mediator from a bad mediator?
Well, this may be wrong, because like I said, like you just said, I don't think mediators dive in to the things they should dive into. I guess that's been your experience. But I do also think it is important that you feel comfortable with your mediator, because you don't want to go and reveal, you are revealing a lot. You're revealing your whole financial situation. I don't ask people to tell me what went wrong in your marriage. Tell me about affairs. Tell me about the things you fought about. Like, I don't ask people to tell me those things. I don't need, to delve into their personal business, but it does come out. And actually, sometimes it isn't. There are times in a mediation where someone does just need to say something to someone, and they may never have had a chance to, because the other person never let them. They may have just left, and they're smart enough to come to mediation and do that. But this may have been the first time they're back together in the same room, and the other person never had a chance to say something like, why did you do this? And sometimes just allowing the person to say that for 10 minutes allows them to just be like, okay, now I can work this out. So things like that sometimes need to happen in mediation. You know what I mean? And sometimes the person just sitting and listening for 10 minutes, from that point on, the mediation can happen, and they can work. So a person who was prior to that point a little bit difficult to work with, once that thing happens, then they're like, thank you. And they can work things out. And sometimes I can recognize that needs to happen. And I say, why don't you just listen for 10 minutes? Because you never did. And then that happens. So again, a long-winded answer, you do find out a lot of things about people. So you need to be with somebody who you feel comfortable with. So that is probably the most important thing. But they do have to be competent too. You have to feel that they're.
Yeah. But it sounds like it's almost like sometimes people need closure. They just need that one question asked, and then they can move on.
Yeah, people want to be heard. And there is a point where it has to stop too. And I'll say, okay, if, enough with the comments, every once in a while, there'll be someone who can't stop with the wise ass comments. And, I'll say enough. Okay, this isn't productive. These comments aren't productive comments. Mm-hmm. Okay, enough of that, enough, you know what I mean? And I'll tell you get all of that in
Sure,
there. You know
sure.
what I mean? And you know when to stop that, but you have to know when. But also the point is, I also believe someone has to be strong enough to tell someone, not in here.
Right.
Someone control the room, but also be kind and know what needs to happen. You need to be able to, but I think you need to, when you meet them at first, both people have to feel comfortable.
Okay.
And I think you get a gut feeling. So if you don't have that with the person, I don't think you can mediate with them, whether they went to Harvard or whether they didn't.
Okay. So Michele, there's never litigation if you've gone through mediation, correct?
Right.
It-
Unless some fell out of mediation, but no. So you never go to court. So if you've stayed in mediation, it's a negotiated settlement. So you've negotiated the terms of your agreement.
Okay. Okay. But
Yes.
do you ever work side by side with an attorney on the same case?
Yes. So as I mentioned in our last session, um, the couple can have attorneys who are very actively involved with this case. I discourage them being in the session. That wouldn't work because it would just be the same old that lawyers do, which is they wouldn't, that would not be productive.
Okay.
But what they will do is after like sessions or between sessions, maybe go back and say, this is where we are. Do you like this? Is there anything you might do differently? And this is usually when there's a pretty big cases with a lot of money involved. Would you go to an attorney between each session? But and this is, yeah, so then would that happen with each session? But yeah, then two attorneys are working very close together, and the attorneys probably wouldn't talk to each other in that case. I would be the one that they would talk to, but they would talk to me and I would talk to the attorneys and try to figure out some of the more complex financial things if we needed to. And we'd kind of all be working together to figure some of these things out, to figure it out, to get to the right place, to get to the right settlement. Kind of like a team effort, really.
Okay. So now, okay, so we go through mediation and we have the whole agreement written up and we all agree on everything. And then I bring it to my attorney, he brings it to his attorney, and they sign off on it. They say, yep, this is fair, this makes sense. Then do we have to go to court? Like, who files everything for the judge to sign? Who does that?
Yeah, so no, you never go to court. I have an attorney so I write the agreement, and then I have a neutral attorney that neither couple is working with check it over and sign off on it to make sure it's going to just to say, okay, that makes sense, that's a good agreement, etc. And then they sign and put more legalese pages on it, notary pages, etc. Put it together as a full legal document, and then they sign and notarize it. And then the attorney that I work with also submits it to the court. They could also agree to have one, or if they had their own attorneys, they could agree to have one or the other of their attorneys submit it if they wanted to. I mean, that happens. That wouldn't be if they agree. I mean, in normal divorces, one or the other attorney has to submit it. So at that point, it's already written and agreed on. It's not really the worst thing if one or the other of their attorneys submits it to the court.
Okay.
But nobody goes to court at that point because it's already agreed on. It's not contested. It's at that point, it's like an illegal agreement being submitted to the court with a bunch of paperwork signed. Nobody has to be served with paperwork like you see in the movies, because people have signed a waiver of service. And so, which says, we've agreed not to be served or whatever. Honestly, I don't even know what it says, but it says that nobody has to be served a subpoena. And so that's all signed and it's submitted to the court. And the funny thing is, I tell people, I feel like the most important point in the process is when you sign the agreement, sign and notarize the agreement, because that's when it becomes binding. And so people are always worried about, like, well, what's the date I'm divorced? Well, actually, I feel like that's really the date, because then it'll get submitted to the court and the court will stamp it on some day. And then you'll get it back in the mail, maybe a week later, and you'll open it and you'll be like, oh, wow, I've been divorced for like a week and I didn't even know it. You know what I mean? So I feel like the date that people should have the divorce parties or whatever, they talk about would be that date that you take that, you get that paperwork and you get it notarized and you sign it. To me, feels like the date. But, people are always like, well, what's the date of divorce? Because actually some people actually sign and notarize it and then actually don't send it to the courts for a while because they might want to stay on the same family health care plan. Okay. So some you don't send it to the court for years, but they are kind of, in a weird way, divorced because it says the party shall live as if unmarried, and they kind of live that way for a long time, and they're kind of divorced. They just get married and
right. They'd say they're divorced, but they haven't taken that final step so they can stay on the health insurance. Yeah.
Right. They're like separated. Yeah, it's very common.
I'm going to give you a number again. It's 518-813-6098. It's divorceagree.com. And Michele, somebody who is preparing to come and see you, the couple that's preparing to come and see, what do they need? If we're going to make this a good use of time and be efficient with our time, what things should they have readily available to present to you to help you start helping them?
Right. Well, so when they show up, they don't need anything, and I'm going to send them home with worksheets to fill out to come back. But the things they should be thinking about they should really be thinking about, okay, what are my expenses? This is something that they don't really think about, but they need to be thinking about, because I am going to ask them that, and people think they know it. They're like, oh yeah, I know my monthly expenses, but then they don't. They're like, oh yeah, I forgot that I have to pay cable every month and this every month and that every month. And what does it really cost every month for the kids? Like, they forget that there's piano lessons and all of these lessons. So I really think people should sit down with a notepad and write down their monthly expenses. People don't ever seem to know what they pay on groceries every month, for real. Like, they like, oh gee, I don't know, I think I spend $500 a month, when they're really spending like $900 a month. Like, things like, they don't really know things like that. So I think people should really think about what it's costing them to live for real. They should know also, like, their 401k balances, their, IRA balances. They don't need to know the exact amount, because that changes every month, but a pretty good idea of all their bank account balances. People never seem to understand their pensions or old pensions they have lying around. So anything you can get as far as that, or at least have an understanding of any retirement accounts you have, old retirement accounts, or understand your pension. That's one that we seem to take a lot of time trying to figure out their pensions. So anything you can figure out about your pension beforehand is great. So try to get that information, because we do seem to spend a lot of time trying to dig up that information. So that would be good. I mean, I wouldn't delay coming to the consultation for that, but start getting that information.
Okay. How many tax returns?
You don't, that's the thing with mediation, this is great. It's nice to have your most recent tax return because we might need to dig into some information. But when you go to a lawyer, they say you need to bring 3 years tax returns because they have to swear themselves on your financial. They have to also sign off on your financial affidavit because they're requesting judicial intervention. And your lawyer has to swear too about your financials that you submit to the court. When you're mediating, you're not asking for the judge to get involved. So nobody has to fill out the New York State affidavit, financial affidavits. We never have to submit those.
Oh,
so
wow.
Wow. So you don't know those horrible forms you have to fill?
I do. The ones they charge like 5 billable hours to review. Yes, I do.
Yes.
Know the form.
And how many years did it take you to fill that ugly, horrible form out? You don't have to do that. So we don't need 3 years of tax returns. It's nice to bring 1 year because we might need to refer to it. But you don't need to bring 3 years of tax returns. I almost never had to look at 3 years of tax returns. Your most recent pay stubs, nice also to have, like I asked you to bring that to your first session. But also that information I'll ask you in the forms, like, tell me your take home pay. Your health insurance information is very important because we're going to need to understand what you're paying for health insurance for the children. If one of you took the children, like, what does it cost to insure yourself? What does it cost to insure a family plan versus a single plan? Because, do both of you have access to health insurance? That's a big thing with divorce, health insurance. If do both of you have access to it? Maybe one of you's been covering the whole family because the other doesn't have access to health insurance. But that's a big discussion. If you are the one who is currently on your spouse's plan, what if you're not on your spouse's plan anymore? What are we going to do about that? Are we going to be able to get you health insurance through like the New York State Health Exchange? Are you able to get it through your employer? So if you are, go on your PR site or your HR site, sorry, and see what's available to you and how much it costs a month. Because we need to put that in your budget. Because if we forgot to put that it's now going to cost you $500 a month taken out of your paycheck because you're no longer on the family plan, well, we need to look at that. People forget about that. So maybe we then need to plan to keep you guys legally separated for a couple of years to save you $500 a month so you could stay on the family plan. But is your husband willing to do that? Or is your wife willing to do that? Maybe they're not, because they're going to get married the minute you guys sign those papers. Maybe they've got a girlfriend and they want to get remarried and they don't want to keep you on their health plan. Like, there's stuff like that going on. So we need to know their reality. We need to know what it's going to cost for you to get your own health insurance. So things like that. So that's important to know ahead of time. So, which I would also, talk about in the consultation to make sure that you knew before we start to have that information. And this sounds like a lot, like I try not to go boom, 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 because I try to be very careful about, you need to know this and you need to know this, because people get overwhelmed.
Of course.
So I try to not be like, well, you need to have this and you need to know this. I try to be like, well, let's try to, you know what I mean, get it in a more gentle way, so that, because I know if someone came at, I remember it being this way, which is probably why I didn't get divorced for years when I should have done it earlier. People came at me like, well, do you have health? Are you able to get health insurance? Are you able to do this? Well, what's the cost? And then I was like, so I try not to be too like, you need this information before you start, so that people don't get scared away.
Well, that's what we talked about when we initially spoke about you coming on the podcast, is that I think it takes people a good 6 months to a year to wrap their brain around going through with the divorce. And that, like you're saying, they may come in and see you and then they disappear. And you're thinking, well, gee, I wonder if they went somewhere else, or if they changed their mind, or if they didn't. A lot of times they go in for the consult and their head is spinning and they're thinking, do I really want to, break up my family? Which it's, and I'm oversimplifying because there's a lot that goes into, uncoupling, right? Consciously uncoupling. But, and I do think a lot of people have that, what they hope is a cooling off period, but actually it's a coming to reality period where they get that, this is just the same old every day and it's not going to get better. And I really got to end this.
Right. And the reality is, the stuff that they do need together really isn't that much, when then they stop and look and say, okay, that isn't that much to look at. This isn't that much to look at. This isn't that, it really isn't that much to look into.
Mm-hmm.
Really, when you break it down and do it step by step, it really isn't that much information to get together when you do it step by step. And I try to help them, see it that way, and try not to be like, throw it all at them at once. And if it means they don't have it all together before the first session, that's okay. I can help you get that together. If that means we have to log on to your HR site during a session, and if that helps you so you're not so overwhelmed, then we'll do that. You know what I mean? I don't want you to get crazy, like, this is to be helpful to you, not to be overwhelming.
Right. Well, Michele Martin, thank you so much. You provided so much information. I'm sure we will see you on the program again in the future. Again, that phone number is 518-813-6098. It's divorceagreed.com. And Michele, before I let you go, and again, thank you so much, but before I let you go,
Again,
dead or alive, if you could have dinner with anyone, who would it be?
oh my God. Oh, you didn't warn me about this.
I did not give you that question up front.
Oh my God. Probably going to be an economist of some kind. Bork.
Who?
Oh my God. My boyfriend, who's a history teacher, is going to be very upset with me if I don't say something very good here.
Well, remember, you're the one that's buying dinner, so you can pick whomever you want to invite. So if it's an economist, then I can't think of one. But
He's going to be someone who likes cheap food. Oh my God, I'm not even being creative here.
Pretend we hung up, then you'll think of somebody.
Oh my God, I'm going to kill you. I'd have 10 people if we were just talking and I
That's
was
why
not.
I like to just ask it off the cuff. One of my guests that I had on, she said one answer, and then after she's like, it would have been Dolly Parton. I meant to say Dolly Parton.
Actually thinking of music, like Barry Manilow, like if it was a music person, would be, yeah. but that's too easy. Uh, oh my God. I don't know. I can't believe I'm saying that.
Okay.
That's
You know
too
what?
many.
You can let me know after the fact, and I will add it on, because I think this is adorable. You can't think of anyone.
Oh my God. That's awful. Isn't it? Oh my, no, David Sedaris. David Sedaris.
David Sedaris.
David Sedaris. I love him. He's my favorite author and humorist, and I love him. He kills me. I love him. He's so funny. I love everything he writes. I read, like, I can't get enough of him. I can't hear enough of him. He's hysterical. I love everything he says and writes. He's the best. David Sedaris.
All right, final answer. Okay.
Okay.
Michele, it has been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
It has been my pleasure. Thank you so much.
You are welcome, and I'm sure we'll talk soon.
Listeners that you asked that question, well, they probably know this already.
What was that? Because you cut out a little bit.
I said I'm going to warn all of your listeners to be.
My favorite part of the interview. It is. That's why I didn't do it the first time. I wanted to sneak that on you. So thank you, and thanks for being on, and I'm sure we'll see you again.
Thank you. Thanks so much. We have a great show.
Thank you. Good night.